never understood someone begging for goods, asking for handouts, taking it if they could. And this particular person just had it down back, staring at me for the longest until he finally asked, have you ever opened up Exodus 14? A humble man is all that we ever need. Tell me how much a dollar cost.
A humble man is all we ever need, and Pope Leo XIV has been characterized as especially humble. The office of the Pope, it signals really to the world that this is the most humble man on earth. It's what it speaks to us. But that's only the tip of the iceberg, and that's why I'm starting out this way differently with no intro, because this week in Tyranny is all about going beyond the tip of the iceberg and taking a topic that everyone is talking about, something that's on everyone's tongue, but offering a perspective that nobody else has. Down to the intro, okay? Nothing is typical about what I'm going to do here. And on that topic, while I'm all for being humble when it comes to your abilities, your attributes, your gifts, your fortunes, I don't think one needs to be humble about their uniqueness. I think we should be proud of how unique we are, and everyone is unique. And I play into that. So I'm proud of mine. And with that being said, now I'll do the introduction. Today is episode 127 of This Week in Tyranny. I am your host, Conrad Brogus. Thanks so much for joining me. Today is Sunday, May 11th. It's Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers out there. What else can I say but thank you, right? And I'm wearing a rosary for this episode with the Virgin Mary on it. So of course this is the universal mother, right? The mother of heaven and earth. So I'm wearing it not to be blasphemous or disrespectful, because I'm wearing this not as an outsider or a critic of the church. I'm wearing this as a member of the church. I've received this, it's a gift from a dear friend of mine. It comes from a place that the government currently will not allow me to travel to. It's from San Juan de los Lagos in Mexico. And even though I haven't been to church in about a year, I don't respect worldly church hierarchies. I don't accept all of the doctrines, but I still consider myself a member of the church because I love the world and I love its creator. I fight for truth and love and these principles. I seek and defend objective principles. And I've been told by devout Catholics, Christians, that makes me a member of the church. So I don't reject that. But I am going to talk about the spectacle that was the most recent episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I mean the Catholic Church, right? The jokes aside, though, I know I said I don't make a mockery of it, and I don't. I mean what I'm saying, but I will also do this in the style that I do this, because there are things that I have to say. So jokes aside, a lot of people are saying that this is theater. People have told me these are actors. Look at all this thing with the Pope and how people are losing their minds over it, and it's become such a big topic, and it's all just fake. And I hear you guys, but I think there's definite significance to this. So I'm going to approach this in a very serious way, and I'm going to give a natural law analysis of the Pope's selection. All I can do so far is talk about him being selected this first few days. I'm not going to talk about his life because I don't know him. I just found out about him on Thursday or Friday. And I'm not going to talk about what he has done as a pope because there's no data there. But I am going to talk about the symbolism, especially. In the intro that I played, you heard, have you ever opened up Exodus 14? A humble man is all we ever need. Exodus 14 is, of course, the section in the Old Testament where the Israelites are taken out of slavery in Egypt. And in Exodus 14 specifically, God says that he is going to harden Pharaoh's heart, and Pharaoh is going to pursue them, okay, to get them back into slavery. And this is when Moses splits the Red Sea. And of course, after he waves his hand over the sea again, all of the Egyptians are killed. Already the symbolism jumps out at me because Donald Trump has been set up to be Pharaoh in this scenario. In this scenario, not just with the Pope being selected, but In general, what we're seeing transpiring in the world today with current events, Donald Trump is Pharaoh. This is the first American leader in the whole country's history who clumsily flaunts his power. This is something you would expect from the clumsy rulers of old, the Tsar, the Caesar, right? The old world leaders, the royal family. You would expect that from that side. It's never really been an American thing, and for all of the stereotype of Americans being brash in a certain way, when you talk about the leadership, that's never happened in a leadership position. George W. Bush and Barack Obama, they did all of the same things that Donald Trump is doing between the two of them. They've done it all. The executive power, overreach, crackdowns at airports, financial crisis. George W. Bush had his gaffes and clownish moments, right? Military aggression and interventionism throughout the world, especially with both of them. Not only the war in the Middle East, but then the continuation of it and the bombings, the Predator drones. I mean, both of these figures, we've already seen this type of behavior, but neither of them were as brazen and arrogant as Donald Trump comes across. And it matters to me. I implore you to see this long vision here, that what is happening in this world today, it didn't just happen because of the last 5 or 10 years. It was set into motion 100 years ago. And it's not what it sounds like. It's not crazy conspiracy theory. It's actually just the way the world works. Very simple. In construction, where I work, the success of a project is decided in the preparation. It's already decided if it's going to be done well by who you hire, who's presiding over it, how much time do they have dedicated to what they're going to do, what kind of tools the subcontractors are going to use, what their working conditions are going to be, and what the plan is. Okay? Now you take that to a completely different scenario in a championship fight like boxing or martial arts. You can ask the champions, and this is what they say. They say the outcome of that fight is decided in the training, the preparation of the fight week, and the weight cut. All of those decisions that are made leading up to the fight, that's when the fight is actually won. So by the time the fighters make their entrance into the ring and the fight has not even started yet, it is already decided who's going to win. I don't say that. They say that. Now, of course, there are going to be lucky punches and injuries and accidents, and that all happens. But outside of that, we already know who the better man is. They already know this. There are really no surprises. Who's the better man? And actually nowadays with replays, like instant replays in the internet now, we actually see that more. We've actually seen that these things that we used to see as spontaneous events, like that crazy punch that he got hit with, you can break it down and see that it was actually set up. It's actually not all that spontaneous. There are things that led up to that going down the way it did, down to Conor McGregor's leg breaking in the cage, even, things like that. There's a cause for every effect. That's a principle of life. And it was carefully planned, this multi-generational changing roster of world leaders, okay? So there's a specific reason for why Donald Trump is the leader of America now, at the same time that an American Pope gets chosen for the first time ever. There's a reason there. There's a connection there. We're going to talk about the connection. We're going to talk about the symbolism and the personality traits of them, right? And that's where I'll start. The main trait of them, the main difference, starting with arrogant versus humble. Leo XIV is characterized as being a kind man, a humble man. That's kind of all we really know about him so far. Now, him being an American, it's clearly a counterbalance to Donald Trump. Now, the world, as long as they accept this premise that one of these guys is arrogant and one of these guys is humble, as long as they accept the premise that division is real, that one is arrogant in his heart truly and one is humble in his heart truly, if you accept that, it doesn't matter who you support. This is how polarization dialectics work. It doesn't matter what side you choose. You're going to lose as long as you accept the rules of the game. So I will be making zero judgments in this episode. Zero judgments of character. Just observations. That's it. Starting with names and numbers. Names and numbers is how I begin analyzing symbolism. It's nothing magical. I'm just going down to the fundamental building blocks of what makes up the world, the digits and the characters of language. Starting with that, because symbolism is a science. It's not woo-woo, and it's not magical connections. I don't have any like connections to the divine to be able to break things down. It's really just hardcore breaking it down, reasoning, objective. So Leo the 14th, he was born, of course that's his pope name, that's not his name, but he is 69 years old currently. He was born September 14th. From Chicago, Illinois, from my city. It's interesting. Obama was from Chicago too. It's very interesting. Of course, that was a big deal to everyone here. Now, his birth name is Robert Prevost. Robert, the name, it is said it was introduced by the Normans during the reign of Edward the Confessor and became very popular. So this is a Norman name. Prevost itself is a French last name. Normans, this is the north of France. Going short form Bob or Rob. Of course, when something is bobbing, it is like moving around. It's bouncing around, bob and weave. But also to rob. Of course, this became used. Even the word Bob was used as a way to call the robbers, someone who like we call the robber barons. I'm kind of throwing this out. Whatever, I'll just go right through it. I always say this, that it starts out clumsy with symbolism because you have to just kind of start putting data points out there for you to bring it together. So it's never like a nice thesis step by step. It sounds like I'm hitting you with a lot of random stuff. Now, the name Robert, if you're talking about the etymology, it comes from the Gaelic bria. Bria meaning beautiful or fine. This is, of course, the Brigid, the pre-Christian Irish goddess. Brigid, this is, of course, pagan. We're talking about pagan symbols, right? This is part of the reason it's interesting, down to September and the 7th and the 14th. We're going to talk about all that. But Brigid has her festival on February 1st. This is known as Imbolc. This is February 1st. This is why we have a Groundhog Day holiday February 2nd, because it's the midpoint of winter. And this is the time where you actually celebrate that goddess Brigid, which is really kind of a mother goddess. It is, it's not the Virgin Mary, right? But it is that kind of motherly goddess that has been worshipped and venerated throughout history, right? So that is the origin of the name. It's before Christianity. Now the last name Prevost is French, and that is actually a French word that means one placed in high command. It's not only a French name but an Anglo-Norman word. Prevost means someone that is like selected to be a leader. So we're talking about Bria having the color white, pure, but also then there's a dark side of that name being someone who's slimy, right? Is like a robber, having ulterior motives. Now Prevost, I look at the name and it tells me previous. It sounds like we're saying Robert previous, as in same as old, a return to the old, and that is kind of a central theme of what I'm going to talk about here with the Pope. Now, the other thing I got to talk about is the 14th, because he is Leo the 14th, and he was also born on the 14th day, September 14th, which is interesting because September, although it's the ninth month, linguistically, it's the number 7th. Like a septagon would be, a septagon is a seven-pointed, seven-sided figure. We call that a heptagon, but sept means 7. So 714 we have. And what I'm getting at is this, the 7 days of the week, and then also the 4 seasons, kind of that cycle, that pagan wheel of the year, okay? Because you have a 7, 14, 21, and 28. If you're going to say there's a week for, if you're talking about a month as being like a wheel, you will have 4 of those sevens. So you've got the 7 and you've got the 14. They're the 4 fixed signs, which I'm going to talk about. Now, what are the 4 fixed signs of astrology? You have Taurus, which is May 1st would be the midpoint of spring. This is why May Day happens around this time. It's a pagan holiday, right? It's not quite Easter, but that is the pagan holiday of the central day of spring. The central day of the summer would be around August 1st, July 29th, and that is of course Leo. That is the sign of the lion, and that's why the fixed sign of the summer season in astrology is known. He's known as the king of the jungle. This is what a Leo is. This is why the personality of a Leo is very bright and they're always the star of the show. They're very powerful. They're very the spotlight is always on the Leo. So you've got the name as well there. Now 5-1 is Taurus, May 1st. That is Taurus is of course the bull. I talked about Taurus before in the bull and the bull of Wall Street and this kind of worldly energy. Then there's the whole Babylonian bull god, right? Baal and the whole thing, the bull with the horns. I'm making this connection between Taurus and Leo because these are the solar rulers. If you're talking about the spring and the summer, the masculine season, so to speak, or the solar season, those are your 2 rulers. As opposed to the other 2 fixed signs, which are Scorpio and Aquarius. This would be the lunar rulership. Their characteristics are a lot more subterranean. They're underground. Aquarius is very mental and Scorpio is very fiery. But of course, what is a Scorpion? His attack comes from the tail and you don't see it. So when you're looking a Scorpio in the face, you're not seeing the attack that's coming at you. So it's a much different kind of power and quality we're talking about. We're talking about Taurus and Leo. The Pope gets selected around this time, right? Pope Francis dies and he's replaced by. So when you talk about Taurus the bull, this is that kind of energy that's very earthly, very material. Those who are in tune with astrology are seeing this a lot better than those that are not. And I kind of have a mix of people who are going to listen to this. So I'm trying to really balance how much time I'm going to spend explaining one thing, because it's really not to be explained in 1 hour, but that's what I'm going to have to do. So since we're in the springtime energy, we're close to Beltane, right? We're close to May 1st. This guy is elected May 8th, and that is actually the same day as Victory in Europe Day. This is the day that is the anniversary of the end of World War II. Tuesday, May 8th, 1945, that marked the official stuck between original and official surrender of the all German military forces. Of course, the Nazis never surrendered. The Wehrmacht surrendered, but that's beside the point, right? 80 years later, why is this relevant now, that it would be the same day as the end of the World War II and the Nazi reign? It's because when you think about Make America Great Again, and not just America, when you think about an original return to former greatness, that is the same narrative as the Nazis. That is why the National Socialist Party of Germany even came to power in the first place. It was all set up. That was the call that got Adolf Hitler into power. It was that there's complete injustice happening in this world, and Germany is being completely unfairly treated, and we need to return it to the former glory. That is the same kind of messaging we're getting today. It was all about the return to old glory, and it wasn't just Germany, the country. That was the surface level of what they told the people, but in the inner circle of the Nazis, there was all of this, what is called as esoteric Nazism, because there was the rhetoric there, the narratives there were all about the Aryan race. That was the ideology. It had to do with the Godmenschen, where the godmen, the former godmen, and Thor and pagan Nordic heroes. This was also called the Volkish movement. It was all about the northern and the fatherland and reclaiming what was lost for the human species, the way the human species used to be an elevated race. This is all related to Atlantis and the racial mixing and racial degeneration. That was the Nazi ideology. Now, why does this matter? Because Robert Prevost's father, Pope Leo XIV's father, Louis Marius Prevost, he served in the Navy during World War II. And you can read this. This is now a defense.gov article, so the U.S. government is even promoting this. Just at least informing people that the Pope's father actually landed on the beaches of Normandy. Prevost was born July 28th, 1920 in Chicago. So his dad was born July 28th, which is 7/28. This is another one of these multiples of 7. I told you, 7, 14, 21, 28. His dad, after graduating from college, he was commissioned in November 1943 and became the executive officer of a tank landing ship, and he participated in the D-Day landings in Normandy, France on June 6, 1944, as part of Operation Overlord, what it was called. So D-Day, already the letter D is the fourth letter, so it's 4-4. And of course it happened in 1944. That's not just a biblical call to the 144, but also that number 44. And what it is, when you write the fours, you're making 2 lightning bolts with your hand, like the SS. It goes very, very deep in the way this number is. It shows up during specific times. But also with June 6 is 6-6. These repeating numbers, we see that in occult rituals. We see that really not just in occult rituals, but the repeating numbers are... So what does it tell you? Not only that history is repeating, we see that a lot in what we call synchronicities, where you see repeating numbers. Well, in the New Age spiritual circles, this means that you're on the right path, right? Or that the universe is trying to tell you something. Well, what it is really telling you is that you're recognizing patterns. A key moment is happening, because everything is cyclical. There's a spiral nature to everything. So when you're seeing repeating numbers, you're seeing, it's like the idea of deja vu, like, oh, we've been here before. So now that we're talking about plans that are made 100 years into the future, people that want to bring those plans to fruition, they're going to use repeating numbers to make it happen, because they want to use repetition, reflection, persistence, all these properties of placing a thing upon itself or reflecting it upon itself. So that's why something like that would happen on 6-6. Also, Operation Overlord, the initials of that are 6-6, because O is the 15th letter. So 1 + 5 being 6, you got the OO, and that's 6. Not to mention the owl is known for big open eyes, and that is like 2 O's. So it's almost like the number 66 is right there. So you've got all those numbers and letters, and then the city, the place, Normandy. Normandy actually means north. It's referring to the Norse, the Vikings, the Scandinavian warrior travelers. That is what Normandy is. It's in the north of France. That's what it is. And I want to tell you a bit about the Normans, and this is how they were characterized. This is a characterization by the 11th century Benedictine monk and historian Goffredo Malaterra. He characterized them as this: specially marked by cunning, despising their own inheritance in hope of winning a greater, eager after both gain and dominion, given to imitation of all kinds, holding a certain mean between lavishness and greediness, that is perhaps uniting, as they certainly did, these two seemingly opposite qualities. Their chief men were specially lavish through their desire of good report. They were moreover a race skillful in flattery, given to the study of eloquence, so that the very boys were orators. A race altogether unbridled unless firmly held down by the yoke of justice. They were enduring of toil, hunger, and cold, whenever fortune laid it on them, given to hunting and hawking. delighting in the pleasure of horses and all of the weapons and garb of war. When you listen to that description, these were Americans. This describes Americans. It's progress and acquisition, right? Not being happy with what you got from your father, but wanting more. That's the endeavoring spirit. That's the immigrant spirit. Two, being both lavish and greedy. So that's work hard, play hard. That's wanting to acquire more and get more, but also to indulge, to splurge, to spend. Given to the study of eloquence, we're talking about expressive language. Is American English not the expressive language that really goes outside of the boundaries? But it is it's not quite French. Like, you could say French is the language of love, but is there anything more like beautiful and direct than American English? When you think about these qualities, not only are these American qualities, I'd say specifically they're Black American qualities. Like, if you took the so-called Black Americans, that group of people, I think that especially applies there, right? Because we're talking about popular culture, which is Black culture, right? Like jazz, hip hop, and then also the jewelry, flashiness. We're talking about a very enduring people, but then if they're not living in the right way, then they can be, what do they call them, unbridled, right? So people can go a little wild if they're not holding to certain principles. Very enduring and loving weapons. Is this not? Does that not describe that perfectly like that? But it describes the spirit of America as a whole, with that enduring spirit and surviving tough times, and the love of guns. I mean, that is kind of the cherry on top, right? So when you talk about the Norman people and who the Norman people were, I mean, it sounds like Americans. It sounds like that type of spirit of people, and that type of people, that's the fun side of the Aryan coin, because the Nazis also looked up to the Nordic gods and paganism and the runes and all of that. So there's all like whatever the Norman roots are, that's a common root of what the Aryans looked up to. But symbolically, when we talk about the Nazis and everything that World War II was, it was the culmination of a massive destruction of humanity and a destruction of human history. Like, everything that the Renaissance was and the Enlightenment was and Romanticism and the Industrial Revolution, it was all destroyed by World War II. And then when these brave young men are landing there on the beaches of Normandy, it was not a liberation of the old world. It should have been. It was set up to be like that. In a Hollywood movie, it would be the son who fell out with his father, right? Like, they split from Europe and came to America and totally did the opposite of what they did in Europe. That would be the story of that young boy growing up and returning to save his father and reuniting the family back together, right? The forgotten character and person and all this, the forgotten figure and all this, is the mother, right? It's like we're talking about like the father and the son, but where's the mother? I mean, as it is Mother's Day, I always want to stress just the importance of women and the presence of women in this thing we do, right? Fighting for freedom, you know. Think about the moms of these people and this whole war, and it's happening again. Like, this is why it's important to see this symbolism, is because we're going to repeat history. Now, that's what should have happened. If it was a Hollywood movie, that's the way it would have ended. But really, those young men landing on that beach was really the beginning of the end of America and all the worst things about America. America the mercenary, America the attack dog, the world's policeman, intervening in every conflict, right? These young men that were sent there to die at Normandy, it was an unholy reunion. It was the American spirit, which is the Norman spirit. It went to Normandy to die. That's what happened. And America there fused with the old world. All of the old world's worst characteristics. A strong central government, a king, an emperor, an emphasis on religion and cultural unity, as opposed to the coexistence and the peace between religions and cultures. that's what's uniquely American. It's a detachment of those identities at the collective level, yet at the individual level, the liberty to be the most staunch and extreme in your love of your religion and love of your culture at the individual level. But what happened after the World Wars, World War I and II, it became a sick fusion of the new and old, which is what we have today and has been growing since then. And it's no accident that the nation of Israel was created after World War II. And really, the Holocaust as a whole, the way it happened, the reason it happened this way. What's the reason? So Israel is that union of the Eastern and Western qualities. At the center, it's a fundamental religion. It's Judaism. But it's also at the head of the spear of some of the most liberal movements. It's amazing the way that is. Israel is very liberal, but it's also fundamental at the center. Being Jewish, it's the only identity that is both an ethnicity and religion. So when you think about the separation of church and state, well, people say America is founded on Judeo-Christian values, and maybe that's the case, but it's also very the opposite of that today, right? And then I'll bring back the qualities of the Normans, if you read them again. Cunning, eager for gain, greediness, good talkers, resilient, warlike, all those qualities, those are Jewish qualities. We talk about the Jewish people, that kind of describes them. And what they actually are is they are the Viking, Nordic, Aryan qualities. They're also serpent-like qualities, for those that get that symbology. And I mention this because there is a singular common origin to the chaos of the world today. Like there's an occult knowledge of these origins out there, these historical narratives and these symbols. And these guys, they know what I know, and they know way more, because they have the artifacts and they have the physical evidence and things that I and other researchers just don't have. So they have evidence in these, doesn't matter who it is, but these people have the evidence of things that occurred in the ancient past that the general population just does not know. And if you had those artifacts and those stories and those secrets on top of the historical occult knowledge, if you had that, and now I'll bring in who these people are, and you already have worldly power, and you already have this kind of an idea that you're part of a select few, and you have money, and you have history of land ownership and people working on your land, and this kind of an overlap of being different, that combined with the artifacts and the occult knowledge, you would think yourself to be very different and even very alien to the rest of the world and people in general. So if you were a person like that, then mass manipulation and war and human sacrifice and ritual abuse, those would make more sense to you if you knew that. And those things, anyway, would only be revealed to those people who are already pre-screened and observed to have those predispositions and proclivities to those wicked things. In other words, I'm talking about deranged people and psychopaths. So you only would have the access to those secrets if you are already known by the people that have those secrets that he's going to see it this way. He's going to respond to this way. So we can trust him to give them those secrets, because we know what he's going to do based on his mentality. And I'm just trying to paint a picture of the kind of people that we refer to as the elites. And there's many different people. The technocrats are not the same as the transhumanists and the bankers. There's an overlap. But when you talk about people who are concerned with the lineal, historical origin of powers and authority, that's the Catholic Church, more so than any other institution. That's the Catholic Church. And that is why the Pope is such a big deal. All that to say that. And I'll get back to some of this symbolism, but in my personal opinion, based on the observation that we live in a world of inversion, and we do, where every known aspect of human behavior is upside down, and the way that things actually are going away from what they should be. And based on that, I firmly believe that generally, allowing for some overlap, generally, the Pope is going to be the wickedest man on earth. And I say that with my love and faith for the God of nature, the source and creator of life and the laws of life. My loyalty is to the living God. And I trust my powers of discernment, sense, and knowing. I trust that they don't lead me astray. And I trust that the voice that I was given and the courage to use it is not leading me astray, because it's not easy for me to say these things, what I just said. But I love and trust that who I am, because I love and trust the God who made me. And this has been totally inverted. It's why I have to mention it. Why is it that that's what being humble means? Like, why is it that for me to praise God means that I can't praise myself? Why do they have to be opposite? Why should I not strive to be more like Jesus Christ, when I know in my heart that he would be the one to say what everyone else is afraid to say? Right? So just to be clear about what I'm saying, I think the symbol of the holiest person in the world, like who is shown to the world as the holiest person, I think behind closed doors, they go the furthest of anyone in the level of depravity they take part in. And I'm not just picking on the Catholic Church, because the Dalai Lama, there's the Dalai Lama, and there's this whole widespread issue of sexual abuse and abuse by students, the abuse of students by leaders and gurus in Hinduism and Buddhism. And actually, Eastern spiritualism, they get way more mainstream defending and PR than the Catholic Church. See, it's not how it used to be. You can actually talk shit. You can say the worst things about the Catholic Church nowadays, and you won't really get a lot of pushback. But when you say things about the Eastern traditions and the same kind of pedophilia going on in the Eastern religions, then you're going to really get pushback. They're going to really whitewash any kind of criticism of Buddhism. And I've noticed this. And it blew me away. So when the Dalai Lama, he put his tongue in another boy's mouth on video, and everybody saw it, and all of the articles and publications came out saying that it was a Chinese propaganda campaign that tried to slander him, that's actually like an Eastern tradition, and it was just a miscommunication. He apologized and it was a misunderstanding. No, it was a grown man tongue kissing a little boy is what it was, and it happened in front of the world. And still, Eastern spirituality is seen in such a highlight, despite the leaders of those traditions being just as dirty. So I'm not going to drop the problem of child abuse in any spiritual tradition, because it exists in all of them. And I'm for the Catholic Church to succeed, and for it to truly return to what it was supposed to be in Christ's teachings. And you know, the way I see it, you should not cover up for any snakes in your hierarchy. If there's snakes on your team, if there are pedophiles within your ranks, you're supposed to be the first one to call them out, not defend the institution. So, but again, I'm not singling anybody out, because it's Christianity, it's Islam, it's Judaism, it's Buddhism and Hinduism. All of them have child sexual abuse rampant within the hierarchy. So it's not, and that all of that what I said about child abuse, that's not an accusation or an attack on Pope Leo XIV, because I don't know him. I don't know what's in his heart. So it's not an accusation, really. Like, I'm not just trying to cover my ass by saying that. I'm saying for real. I don't assume that he is a certain way just because he got a certain position. I'm not one of these people that think that anybody who is rich and becomes a billionaire is evil. I don't make those assumptions. But I'm just talking about the way the world works, how we see it to be. We can see that the way that school works, for example, school and education, the things that go on in the day of in a school day in a child's life, those are the last things that you would do to educate a child and bring them up to be independent adults. You wouldn't rip them out of bed that early. You wouldn't keep them there for such a long time without any movement and fun and motion and music. You wouldn't put them all together and have them do the same things and put the spotlight on them and then give them a gold star if they spit back to you what you put into them. You wouldn't teach them facts and dates, and you would ask them a lot more questions. You wouldn't monologue to them. All of these things. Now that's school. the President of the United States, for example, that's the last person fit to address this nation when we're talking about just the speech and the eloquence and the way you come across and unite people. I talked last week about how 2 NHL hockey coaches would be much better for that position. Hockey coaches. What else? When you look at the symbol of the most famous and popular girls in the world, who they are, what they talk like, what they do for a living, these are the last symbols that you would want your young girl, your little girl to look up to. Those are the last symbols that you should use. So based on these contextual observations, that's what it's based on. And it's also based on personal victim reports and allegations made against priests, bishops, cardinals, and a pope. I've heard one. And based on that analysis, and also based on both feeling and intuition when I hear those allegations, and then also the corroborations and the overlap with other individuals. So it's not just hearsay. I'm hearing other people that like confirmed that were convicted, okay, people that are involved, that are known to be involved, and I'm seeing an overlap with those people. And you combine that all in one, I have no reason to believe those things to be untrue. Okay, and that's on YouTube, what I'm referencing. Some of you may know, but I'm going to just link it and just kind of put that there quietly. It's in the description if you want to dive into that. But I'm going to repeat it again, that I don't hold that against Pope Leo XIV or any member of the church currently, because I don't believe in collective guilt. I don't believe that just because someone next to you did that I'm going to assume that you're the same. I'm not assuming anything. So my intention is really not to smear mud and ugliness on this man. And I don't want to hurt anyone who's listening to this, anyone who's feeling hopeful and loving as a result of a new pope being chosen. It's really not to crush your optimism. I don't believe in crushing your optimism. I'm just providing a necessary counterbalance to the reaction and the attention that his election was given. It's just for the whole story to be told. So if the rest of the world was talking about how horrible the church is and all the abuse that's going on there, if everybody was slandering the church and really saying the worst things, I'd be the one defending them. And I do. And I have. I continue to. I want to be fair. So I don't come on here doing what feels good to me. I come on here to fill the void, to say the things that other people are just not. Okay, it doesn't make me special even in my ability to see things. I only want to be prideful about my uniqueness, and I think everyone can do that and should. So now I'm going to talk about the actual name Leo the 14th. Leo the 14th, his pope name, and of course, it's about Leo the 13th, and it was thought that is a reference to Leo the 13th when he chose his name. But before I had to make that assumption and come on here and give my, give that analysis. Yesterday, I believe he already said this. Pope Leo the 14th actually said why he chose this name. And I'm going to quote from it now, and you can see this. Sensing myself called to continue in the same path, I chose to take the name Leo the 14th. There are different reasons for this, but mainly because Pope Leo XIII, in his historic encyclical Rerum Novarum, it's called, addressed the social question in the context of the first great industrial revolution. In our own day, the Church offers to everyone the treasury of her social teaching in response to another industrial revolution and to developments in the field of artificial intelligence that pose new challenges for the defense of human dignity, justice, and labor. The Pope actually said that. He said that this is specifically because of the new industrial revolution that is going on. Now, why that excites me, my eyes are lighting up, is because I did a show, I believe 3 weeks ago, talking about, I think the title was, How Donald Trump's administration is actually bringing in the Great Reset. And I talked about step by step. Okay, before I get into that, this document that he quotes that Pope Leo XIII wrote rerum novarum. Rerum novarum is Latin for of revolutionary change of the world. It means it's talking about the world revolutions. Its full title, Rights and Duties of Capital and Labor, is an encyclical issued by Pope Leo XIII on May 15th, 1891. Pope Leo XIII was pope from about 1870 to about 1903. So we're talking about just before the Bolshevik Revolution, just before World War I, just before the turn of the new century. That is when Pope Leo XIII was pope. And this is around those times where you're seeing this is when both esoteric Nazism and esoteric communism was developing. This is 100 years after the French and American revolutions. The Industrial Revolution happens, right? The 1800s. Life fundamentally changes. This is when people stop being peasants and they start being what they are today, modern plumbing, the decline of child mortality going up, going down so much. It is just a change from the old way of life to the new way of life with medicine and communication, the printing press. All of that happens in the mid 1800s. And that is the same time that you get communism and Nazism. Why? Because that was the counter. That was the counter. All of this stuff that we're seeing that is destroying humanity today and that has destroyed humanity in the last 100 years, that was a direct response to humanity demanding and getting its freedom. The level of freedom, the level of dignity, the level of personal choice, and just a splitting of the old way. A return to the Renaissance ideals, the Enlightenment ideals. That's what was happening in the 1800s. Now, during this time of course, talk about revolutions and all of this, right? Karl Marx and all of this is happening around that time. It was an open letter passed to all Catholic patriarchs, primates, archbishops, and bishops that address the condition of the working classes. It discusses the relationships and mutual duties between labor and capital, as well as government and its citizens. Of primary concern is the need for some amelioration of the misery and wretchedness pressing so unjustly on the majority of the working class. It supports the rights of labor to form unions, rejects both socialism, although some, notably Archbishop Victor Sanabria, have interpreted as not rejecting socialism, but it rejects socialism and unrestricted capitalism, while affirming the right to private property. It may sound very interesting to you that this would come from the Vatican, discussing this is like the original This Week in Tyranny, right? This is what they did. They talked about what was actually happening there, and a big papal document came out around this time. It was groundbreaking and influential, and that is why the current Pope chooses this name of this. Anyway, I'll tie it in later. But this idea of putting both socialism up there and unrestricted capitalism, and while there's the combat between the two of them, the ideological opposition at the time, Pope Leo XIII comes around, and the Catholic Church, they come around and they're saying that both of these are false. So they point out the dialectic there. I haven't read this entire document, but I've read a part of it, and there's a lot of good in here. There's a lot of truth in here. And I always say that is the way it's going to read. When you really read the working class, they're going to say a lot of things that make sense. They don't just lie to you. Rerum Novarum is not full of lies. It's an interesting document. Anyway, I got to read this thing to really tell you how interesting it is. But it is just when you read, if you read Klaus Schwab or you read Zbigniew Brzezinski, if you're reading these technocratic books, you're going to see their craziness is going to reveal itself in their presumptions and their visions for the future. But when they talk about like what actually is and principles, they're going to make sense a lot of the time. But what I wanted to talk about is that idea of pointing out that there's this opposition and that neither of these are the solutions. And that is exactly what I talked about 3 weeks ago that is coming from the World Economic Forum. talking about state capitalism, shareholder capitalism, which are state capitalism is socialism and shareholder capitalism is unrestricted capitalism. And then what the World Economic Forum presents as being the solution and the resolution is stakeholder capitalism. So the point I'm making, guys, is that the World Economic Forum and the Catholic Church are on the same team, and they, in what before it was called the World Economic Forum, what the think tanks in academia and banking influences and media of the day was doing was the same. They're on the same team as the Vatican and the Pope. And that was back then. And that manifests today. Not only do you have Pope Leo XIV, it's telling you that because we have another industrial revolution and we have AI, that's going to bring up new challenges. And he wants to carry on in the footsteps of Pope Leo XIII in really attacking that challenge. That's happening at the same time as the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab is telling you that we need to fundamentally change capitalism, and the way things were in the old world all have to change because we've got new challenges and we have to save the earth. That's what's happening. To my knowledge, I am the first one to point that out. I think it's crucial. I think that is key. That is a key thing that needs to be made popular. I don't want credit for it. I don't give a fuck. I'm going to have another episode next week, But Pope Francis was called a socialist pope by so many. Like the devout Catholics told me that. And I say, you guys thought the last pope was a socialist? Watch this one. And socialism is not even your enemy anymore. That is what I want to really present here as well. Socialism was set up to fail. Just like modern capitalism, they're both done for. They're done for because like they were built with fatal flaws in the way that they were that they were set up. I don't see a flaw with laissez-faire capitalism, but there is a flaw with corporatism of today, and of course socialism. A utopian, non-money way of life could work, but socialism is already not that. So they're both set up to fail. And they're telling you 130 years ago that both of these are going to fail. And those all are falling, and the church lives on. And you can laugh and joke at the Pope, and you can say that these people have no power anymore. You could say that the King of England doesn't have a say in anything anymore, right? Sure, except when they do something, everyone is still talking about anything these people do. They're very prominent in the hearts of people. Whatever the royal family does, whatever the Pope does, it's going to be a big deal now. And this is why, for me, and this is now where I'll go into kind of unorganized thoughts. My final point is the World Economic Forum thing, and with stakeholder capitalism being the thing that everyone should be talking about, and the Pope being just another nail in the coffin of human society, in the symbology, right, with Donald Trump and the Catholic Church, and whether they're going to coexist or they're going to counter each other, whichever one it is, as long as you're accepting the premises, you're going to get taken toward that stakeholder capitalism and Agenda 21 and sustainable development and all of that, whether you take the left-wing route or the right-wing route. That is my point. And after we finish with that, I also have more things to say, but they're kind of unorganized, and I think these shows should be more unorganized and freestyle anyway. I almost lost my thought. The first random thought I had is that, hey, I don't ever remember the Pope being such a spectacle, because I remember Pope Benedict, I remember Pope Francis, and I of course remember the Polish Pope, which he was the Pope I think ever since I was born. So I've seen 4 of them now, and I've never seen such a big deal made about it. Now maybe that's just the way the world is. Maybe I pay attention to the news and current events more now since I have a show, but I think this is quite the spectacle, just like the election was, and I think there's a reason for that, because we're coming to a point where it seems to be a time of revolution. They are pushing this stuff forward. We really saw it with ever since the turn of the century. 9/11, financial crash, social media age, COVID-19, and now this kind of, I call it the age of acceleration. Everything's just happening so fast, and we don't even know what's real anymore. And then you superimpose on top of that these two totally opposite symbols: super humble American guy, super arrogant American guy. And we'll see what happens. The other thought I had is that, man, this was just such an exercise in man worship. I see in the plaza, and that they had the white smoke and the black smoke, and then you see all the women crying and so happy about it. It is said that the Pope is actually selected and ordained by God and not the people, but this is not the case. A conclave selected him. A conclave means a private meeting or secret assembly. A conclave means with the key figures. Clave means key, the Latin clavis. Well, has there ever even been a more secret society than the top level of the Vatican? So they selected him. How do we know what are the qualities and characteristics of the man that they're selecting for? Like, what makes him get chosen? This is why when I think about what chooses a pope, I've already made my point. I don't even want to repeat it, because it's dark. And speaking of dark, they had the black smoke on the first day. I never knew about the black smoke. I never knew about that tradition, that custom. But the black smoke and the white smoke is, of course, the polarity. And just the polarity of black and white, we've seen a lot of that, right? Especially in America, right? Black Lives Matter and all of this just polarization. Not just right versus left, but very racial as well. It's interesting with Pope Francis dying at age 88. And now this Pope Leo XIV and having all these 14s in his this number around his name. And then Pope Francis dying at age 48. 1488 is it's not a year. When you see 1488, for those that don't know, like that is a white supremacist symbol or tagline, right? That motif of 1488, because I believe it's the 14 words. The 14 words are a white supremacist document. I actually should have researched that, thinking about the number 14th, and the robe wears white. The Pope wears the white robes, and then the cardinals wear the red. This whole idea of the white and red, and that symbolizing the Aryan race or white supremacy and racial purity, right? So I missed that one. Then the 88, 8 is the 8th letter is H, so HH means Heil Hitler. So that's why 1488 is that. I see a black and white polarity there. Also, if we just think about what black smoke means in combustion, we're talking physics now. This is why these are random thoughts. Good luck putting this in the symbolism breakdown. Black smoke, it indicates incomplete combustion. It means like it's not burning properly. Like if you get black smoke from your car, it means the fuel isn't burning properly. And this can be caused by a rich fuel mixture when there's too much fuel and not enough air for proper burning. So you're talking about an imbalance of the polarities. Too much fuel and not enough air. That would be too much masculine component, not enough feminine. Do I even have to spell it out? Also, this idea that you got black smoke at first, and then when they choose the Pope, it's white. So that means what? That means salvation. That means purification of sin. And that kind of takes you into this imagery of purification and savior thinking that I really, have always been opposed to. And, in Spanish, the word for Pope is Papa. Like Papa is the Pope, and Papa is, of course, the dad. It's the same as your Papa. That's your father, right? That is the father, right? They're supposed to be like the father of the world. And I ask, what makes that guy the father? Because I think it's blasphemy. Another thing that I am opposed to, that I didn't like, is that as soon as they heard new Pope is chosen, I've heard this said by so many people. Okay, what are his views? What are his political stances? That was even online, like you could see it everywhere online. Okay, we got a new pope. This is where he stands on these issues. And I think this is why we're fucked as a people, because everything is about representation. Like just being represented in your team sport in the level of the church, right? Because that's what that is. You want to know what things he believes in because you want to know if this is one of your guys or this is one of their guys, right? So this is like what college he went to. Like, oh, he's a Notre Dame guy. Like, yeah, we're gonna support him. I saw a lot of that. Obviously, I don't like that too much. My last random thought, it kind of bounces off of the second to last thought that I had, which has to do with, okay, what makes this guy fit to have this position anyway? And the only good argument I've ever gotten for the legitimacy of the papacy, like why this is even a legitimate position, the only good argument I've heard is that it goes back to Christ himself. That Christ, it goes, this is Catholic teaching, that the first pope was Peter, the apostle, right? And this is who Jesus gave basically the keys to. He said, you will be the rock that my church is founded upon. And I do think that's actually a good argument. But here's the problem with it. We're all given free will. Everyone is given free will. So, me, in the time of Christ, I would be someone who, I would be an ally of his. I don't even want to say a follower, because I'm not a follower of anybody. I want to help the guy. And this is another one of the crazy things I say, but I think it's not really crazy. The man needs our help. He's you say he's living and among us. Are you acting like it? That's my kind of thing. Now, I mentioned free will because the legitimacy of that, and that being that Peter got the blessing of Christ to be the first pope, I would recognize that as legitimate, like a legitimate transfer of leadership. Okay? When Christ dies, and I know he was resurrected, I'm talking about his ascension. So dies would not be the right word. After Jesus Christ's ascension, because that is when he left the earth, right? There is an actual time in the scriptures that he left the earth and did not come back, and he won't come back until the end times and the second coming and all that. So just being fair to like the actual teachings, that's May 29th we celebrate that this year. May 29th is my brother's birthday. So that's coming up soon. Now after that happens, and Peter's the first pope, Jesus Christ ascends to heaven, and he's not here anymore to confirm, deny, vouch, offer his opinions on anything Peter does. For me, that is the end of the linear papacy. It's only one. If you wanted to be liberal with it and stretch it, I would say, okay, he made Peter the pope, so as long as Peter's alive, I'm going to respect the leadership of Peter. You could go that far. But after Peter gives the papacy to Pope Linus, that's it. So after the second one, after Peter is dead, that is the end of me recognizing that as the leader. So that's objective. I look forward to any challenges to anything I say. Like, I will debate you. I will have a conversation with you. Like, reach out to me, talk to me. It's if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. This is just objective. And my conclusion, to wrap up all these unorganized thoughts: believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Sometimes, if you believe in yourself, not sometimes, you're going to let people down. You're going to let yourself down. I do. I know this is the case. I know that believing in myself comes with, I'm going to let myself down. That's part of it. And when you are unable to truly believe in yourself, and you Just say, I can't do it. Like I'm done. You believe in God. That is what you should do. When you open up to a higher power, you're always going to find it on the other side. When you truly reveal yourself and call out, whatever you call out to, you're always going to find someone on the other side. And that's just the way the life works. I meant to say life, but I guess the life is actually an accurate way to say it, because it's all one life. Like, we're not really separate from each other, and that is why when you call out, you're not separate from something. You're not just talking to yourself. Or if you are, you're also listening to yourself, but that's a different story. Believe in yourself, and if you can't believe in yourself, then believe in God. Yeah, what you shouldn't believe in is someone famous. A political leader, a religious leader, anyone who's a symbol of something. Don't believe that they're going to represent it. Don't assume that they're going to represent it and be that symbol. And we all find ourselves looking up to people and loving the idea of a person. We all do that. But to actually follow them and believe in them, it's a slippery slope. It doesn't help you, and it doesn't help them to look up to somebody past a certain point. Believe in yourself. Believe that God didn't make a mistake in creating us. And believe in our ability to correct our mistakes. That is what I believe in, and I believe in myself. Thank you so much for sticking through that. And thank you again. And I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.
Do what you gotta do, but know you gotta change. Try to find a way to make it out the game. I leave this and hope God can see my heart is pure. Is heaven just another door? I leave this here. I leave this and hope God see my heart is pure. Is heaven just another door? And my people say,
none for them are still in the name of the Lord. Them are tell no fly, but all them are burning a cloud. Using the name of the Lord in vain, while the people in the ghetto them feel no pain. None for them are still in the name of the Lord. Them are tell no fly, but all them are burning a cloud. Using the name of the Lord in vain, while the people in the ghetto feel no pain. None for them are still in the name of the Lord. Them are tell no fly, but all them are burning a cloud. Using the name of the Lord in vain, while the people in the ghetto feel no pain. None for them are still in the name of the Lord. Them are tell no fly, all them are burning a cloud. Using the name of the